Welcome to Thursday morning session. It's my great pleasure to introduce two representatives from the Indian government who are in charge of the UID, or Unique Identification Authority of India. The two speakers are Mr. Ashok Pal Singh, who is the Deputy Director General of UIDAI, and he's been involved in integrating financial services with the UID program, and Mr. Yashwant Kumar, who looks after the authentication services. If you don't know anything about UID, it's one of the largest biometric program ever conceived, and it has made great strides. And perhaps we should make this as an annual event, that at every ICB conference we should have a session devoted to this topic, so that you know how the progress is, what progress is being made. And as many other countries are planning to have a national ID program, I think this program in India is serving as a very useful role model. So without further delay, let me ask Mr. Singh to come and speak.
Thanks, Dr. Jain, and good morning. It's a pleasure to be here. We are particularly grateful to the organizers for giving us this platform. And I'm also, I do really appreciate that you guys have turned up at 8:30 to listen to us in very reasonable numbers. At first, our presentation and our presence on this forum might look like a bit of an oddball, because we're not researchers, and my presentation is going to be devoid of algorithms and equations. But I suspect that some of you might be looking for a break, at least early in the morning, from yourselves. So this is going to be a practitioner's view of what I might call your work. And yesterday, Dr. Jain had spoken about there being a hiatus between researchers and users. I would like to think that the project Aadhaar, which means Foundation of the Unique Identification Authority of India, is a case of bridging that gap. What the government of India has done out here, and I'm not saying this to flatter you guys, is to put faith in this community. And it's not just put faith in this community, which is before us, it's put its money where its mouth is. So it's put in place a project of over $3 billion to give biometric identities to over 1 billion residents. And I think that's a testimony to the good work, the productive work, and the useful work with this community, which I have the privilege of addressing today, is doing. We are here really to learn, because everything that you say, that everything you do, is somewhere along a pointer to our work. So we've been here listening, and give a short presentation. Welcome if you have questions thereafter on it. Well, that's largely the structure of the presentation. At the outset, it's important to understand, and yesterday, often biometrics is associated with security, it's associated with forensic uses. Well, this project is a little different on that account, because it's neither of them. It's essentially driven by a word I picked up yesterday here, was societal good. So what we are looking at is giving every resident of India a biometric identity, and essentially to enable them to access government and private services. Because what happens today is that almost in every country, no matter what you want to do, you need to first prove who you are. That's for a bank account, it's for a telephone connection, it's for subsidies, it's for even entry into airports. And if you don't have that, effectively, you might really be being deprived of a lot of entitlements, a lot of rights. So the mandate of the UIDAI is actually a very specific one, which is providing an electronic identity to residents on demand with ability to authenticate anytime, anywhere. This is important because what we've adopted is a platform approach. And what the UIDAI and the Government of India are doing is putting a platform, an ID platform, on the cloud with open APIs. And whether you are in the government, in the private sector, whatever might be your business, you can access this to authenticate the identity and address of an individual who is interacting with you and is required to prove his or her identity. And we expect a world of applications to come from this, because this is essentially a platform being provided in the nature of a public good. Some features that I'll just quickly run through is, what we are providing is a 12-digit number, which is your unique identity. We don't provide a card. Our ID is formless to that extent. It's a random number which has no intelligence and is just generated without a logic. We don't do any profiling, and in fact, minimal data is collected from the residents. Everyone gets a UID or an Aadhaar on demand, including children. We provide flexibilities to partners, which is enrollment into the system could be done at various points and service providers. It can be done at a government agency, it can be done by a telecom company, it can be done by banks, and we provide them with a certain flexibility on enrolling residents. We don't keep any transaction records of any kind. The identity by itself is only a proof of your identity. It provides no rights, no guarantees whatsoever, but these could be built by service providers. Uniqueness is ensured through biometric attributes. We don't rely on an existing database. And what we aim to provide is a ubiquitous authentication platform which works anytime, anywhere, which is secure, and privacy of the individual's information is very cardinal and very central to the design of the program. So what's the government looking at? One, not have any duplicates and fakes, where particularly it comes to giving social security benefits and subsidies, which in a country in transition like India could be happening on a substantial scale. It provides identity to everyone, particularly to those poor, inaccessed, and without one. And the idea somewhere along is to have a connected service platform. Rest of the presentation would be in three parts: enrollment, authentication, and applications. So this is a snapshot of an enrollment taking place. And essentially, when you go for getting your unique ID, you provide your name, address, gender, and date of birth. We don't ask for any more information than that. You do get photographed, your iris are captured, and the 10 fingerprints are captured. At the back end, we do a 1:n match to find out whether you are unique or not. And if you are unique, then a 12-digit number is assigned to you for life. In fact, the way it is programmed, this number probably in history will not go to anybody else. So one person has one number. This is what typically an enrollment kit looks like. Something important to the UID's work is we don't use any proprietary solutions. We believe in open architecture and total standardization. So this is a kit which is portable, which you can carry anywhere, and just about nothing in this box is, so to say, out of the box. What we do ensure, and you have a choice, you can get enrolled, as I told you earlier, with a service provider of your choice. So if you prefer a bank, you can go there. If you prefer a gas station, you can go there. If you prefer a university, government department, telecom company, wherever you think you're comfortable. The idea is we hate monopolies. We love to give the resident choice. But what we do ensure is that all devices are certified. There's a standardized process, so the client software is provided by the UID, and the protocols for data transfer, right up till delivery of your 12-digit number, which is done through the postman, is standardized and common across the country, which makes this scalable. The next part is the authentication services. Now, when we authenticate, you need to put in your 12-digit number and then provide a fingerprint or your iris, and here it's a 1:1 match. In fact, that's the basic purpose which the 12-digit number does, is that when it comes to authentication, we don't have to go for a 1:n match. You can do a 1:1 match, and we can identify a person with her fingerprints, iris, the demographic data, which is name, gender, date of birth, address. We've also introduced a one-time password service on mobile phones. And it's up to a service provider who's using the service to use one, more, or in any combination, these authentication services. So a bank might want to identify you with two of these attributes. Someone might want to identify you with one. Someone will just, the numbers taken, like in the Social Security scheme in the United States. This authentication can take place over a device, which what you see here is a real authentication taking place, where a banking correspondent is providing a banking service to a resident in a remote area, facilitated by an online biometric authentication provided by the Unique Identification Authority of India. Kind of devices which are currently in the market. Applications. Now, we ourselves are agnostic to applications, and we leave it to the world to build the applications they want. But we did strategically, at the outset, start working closely with the banking industry, because we thought that financial services or banking is a horizontal application which might hold good across the ecosystem. So currently what we do is, the first thing is, as an identity or a proof of identity, Aadhaar allows you to access financial services by proving your credentials. And this can be done in a paperless format, entirely online and real time. The second thing that Aadhaar does in the banking world is that it can work as your proxy bank account. So if you want to receive money, all you need to tell a person is, what's your 12-digit Aadhaar number? And through a banking channel, you could receive money as well as send money to anyone who has this number. At the back end, service providers have a table or a mapper where the Aadhaar could be mapped to a bank account of your choice. Now, this makes it provides a financial address to everyone in the country and makes things a lot easier, because if you change your bank account, it's of no concern to any of your service providers, because they only address you with your Aadhaar number. Finally, it helps in transactions. We showed you that snapshot earlier. So we've been provided a trusted third-party authentication service to the banks, where instead of a signature or a PIN, we offer biometric authentication. And any financial transaction has two parts: authentication and authorization. So the UID supports the authentication, and the bank thereafter gives an authorization after checking the balance. Only a couple of months ago, based on this, the government of India started what it calls the direct cash transfers service. And the idea there is to pay all cash benefits and increasingly subsidies into your Aadhaar number, which is linked to a bank account. And this it brings convenience, it removes fakes and duplicates. So what this is really showing is that multiple service providers could be addressing you on a single financial address, and then you could access this on a biometric device, either at a post office or at a bank or any service point using biometric authentication. The project implementation status is this, that we did the first enrollment of a resident on 29 September 2010. Since then, 400 million residents have been enrolled, and we enroll 1 million residents every day through the kind of architecture that I discussed. Of this, 350 million have their identity numbers, 50 million are under process. We launched our fingerprint authentication services in February 2012, And last month, we also launched our iris authentication service, which means the platform went public and anybody could use it. The direct benefits transfer program, which is one of the largest cash transfer programs globally, went live on 1st January 2013. We did some preparatory studies which might be of interest to this particular audience, so I thought that I'll show you some of that. We did some proof of concepts initially before making our services public, and what this established was that 98.13% of the population could use fingerprints to authenticate themselves. These were the trial runs. The study is available in more detail on our website, which might be of interest to you guys. It also showed that there's an accuracy of about 96.5% using the best finger with up to 3 attempts. The best finger here is what we found was that every individual did have one finger which authenticates better. So we have a best finger detection requirement when you first use the system. And what you do then is you authenticate one by one with all your 10 fingers, and a score is given to you which identifies which is your best finger. And we advise the residents to use that because that's going to probably authenticate them the fastest. In some cases where the quality of the biometrics was poor, we found that fusion was giving better results, up to 90.9.3, although I did take note of a passing reference yesterday in one of the speakers that fusion doesn't help either quality or reliability, and that's the kind of thing we are really here for, to understand. And we believe that accuracy could be further improved if you use more than one modality. Also, what happens is that when you enroll the first time, there's an NFIQ score which the device displays of the quality of your images. And that's a time when there's an opportunity both for the enrollment agency as well as for the individual to try and see that the best possible images are captured. We did similarly an iris authentication proof of concept, which was in 2012, first with kind 2 compressed image of size 15 KB, which we find is a bit of a challenge because the latency for mobile networks comes into play with a packet size as large as this. And the results of this are briefly summarized out here. Again, we have a right to information in India, and the UID believes in setting the gold standard there. So there's almost nothing about the project which is not on our website. So you can find details on this on our website. We did another study more recently with kind 7, which has smaller packet sizes. And again, basically, the feasibility of using iris authentication on a public platform did get validated. The results are something like this. You'll have access to this again on our website. Just wanted to mention 2 interesting pilots. One was for providing subsidized food to residents, which is ongoing in Andhra Pradesh, and using biometric authentication over 1 million transactions have taken place in about the last 6 months, and it's a project which is expanding every day. Similarly, the post office is using biometric authentication on a very substantial scale to make payouts to pensioners and to wage earners under the National Employment Guarantee Program. This is a snapshot of someone receiving her payments at the post office. And this is another one where entries in the passbook are being made because some of the villagers still want the satisfaction of a piece of paper. We've had some learnings from a user perspective and from the perspective of practitioners. So what we find is that operator training is extremely important. Many times they don't go for the best finger, and authentication becomes a little more difficult. We need to train them on cleaning fingers, particularly when they're dirty, dry, or cracked. And we do have instances where the same finger is used in a two-finger authentication requirement. Similarly, the device ergonomics comes into play. This is typical of a rural setting where the service provider might be squatting on the floor and the service provider is standing, so you put a disproportionate pressure. But there are a series of these kind of learnings which can make things better. There are issues relating to devices, softwares, and essentially we've gone about providing this service in a manner or on a scale that we had not tested before. So it is continuously a learning experience, but I think the residents want it, so we get 1 million more every day, and service providers are beginning to use it. And this is all, I would say again, testimony to your work. You're the guys who started this. You're the guys who thought of this. You're the guys who inspired us. And it's been great to talk to you people. And we would, for the rest of the time, be sitting on the other side and listening intently to what you have to say and taking notes, and where need be, talking to you people. I also invite all of you to collaborate with the Unique Identification Authority of India. You're welcome as researchers. You are welcome just out of curiosity. You are welcome as partners. You're welcome to contribute to this program. It's your program. Thanks.
So we have about 5 to 10 minutes for some questions. So if you have any questions, Mr. Singula. Yes.
Thank you. Just have a brief question on collecting the seconds. You say that we work in departments, and so what we need structures here, and was just wondering, concretely, how we can become a partner, or what it means that we can have access to the data and we can play with it, or what?
Well, one is we do put some of our data up there for people to use. The second is, you think of it in terms of a proposal, and what you will find is that we are open and receptive, because we do understand that this is a two-legged journey. We can't do it ourselves. But we've had any amount of collaborations in the design of the program, in the operations, and this has been from across the world. So, we do, one of the things we are working on is a Center for Excellence in Biometrics, and which hasn't yet come out, but it's actually intended exactly for what you're talking. So obviously we will not expose individual data, but aggregated data in a manner that it doesn't infringe either on the privacy or the policies of the program will be allowed to use by the academia and researchers, because that's the only way to move ahead. There's a question at the back.
Well, thank you very much for it. It was very interesting talk. What have we done exactly to ensure the security and privacy of the enrolled individuals?
It begins, one is we take what we believe it's minimal data. So essentially, that's part one. Second is there is encryption taking place the moment the data is getting entered, and the entire process is, we believe, as secure and as well firewalled as it's possible. More important is we have a policy that we don't give out data. So when someone seeks an authentication, we respond in terms of a yes or a no. So we don't give your name out, we don't give your address. But if a service provider, you are consenting with a service provider to authenticate you through the UID, and you put your number and you put your finger, we will come back in about 3 seconds to say either yes or no, which is...
So is there a central database whereby all templates are actually held there?
There is a central database.
Okay. Are you using any sort of cancelable biometrics things or?
No, at this stage, we are not using cancelable biometric, but we are encrypting all the templates and other detail of user at device level using UIDAI public key.
Last bit of question. If say a bank does these, for example, service sector, the private sectors have access to the central database if they want to authenticate their
Actually,
individuals?
so there is concept of ASA, means authentication service agency, and authentication user agency, and user has to take secure, means bank has to take secure lease line through some service provider, and they can connect our database server through secure lease line.
So one of the things you mentioned is that it's mainly for societal benefit program is there, but then this program is closely linked to the National Population Register, and they are also doing the data collection for UID. So how do you ensure that the data collected is not used for other purposes?
Well, the National Population Register, as you said, is collecting its own data, but we use it to provide unique IDs. But that's an application which the Ministry of Home is building, just as a bank is building an application for providing financial services, and a telco is building applications to provide telecom services using the UID. But these are efforts that they're doing independent of the UID on their own standalone platforms in conjunction and hopefully with the consent of the individual. And all that we are providing is a yes-no answer to them only when expressly authorized by the individual concerned, because there is no other way to seek an authentication from the UID except the concerned person putting his or her finger and agreeing to get a response back from the UID. So there is no centralization of databases, and we don't keep any record. So, what the authentication has been used for is not our concern, nor do we keep a record of that.
One more question. Mark?
India is an enormously complex and secular society. Have you any had problems with religion or practice or whatever in India when deploying this stuff?
I think religion can be hugely problematic anywhere, including in India. So you did see that we don't ask for what your religion is.
Saying mark of the beast or something, 666 or whatever. Yeah, going against biometrics for religious reasons. Yeah, I just wondered if you'd seen any reactions of that scope.
No, fortunately that hasn't happened here, but previously as a jack of all trades, I was in the Ministry of Health, and a certain religious group stopped getting vaccinated for polio because they thought it was against their religion. And it did contribute in good measure to prolonging our polio eradication program. Now, I think we have engaged with public policy and public administration. These things don't usually come as surprise, and we know how to deal with them. Fortunately, this project hasn't faced that kind of a challenge, but it does face the kind of challenges that the preceding two questions were talking about. So the Privacy Brigade is something that we are constantly battling, and we've interacted so much with them that we're coming to be friends.
Thank you very much once again. So I think the speakers will be here for the rest of the conference, so feel free to meet with them and talk to them individually. So I think to stay on schedule, I think now we are ready for the plenary talk.